Class 6th. Subject English. Topic Yonamine and Bushi. Before we begin with our lesson, let us know about karate. Karate is a Japanese martial art whose physical aspect seeks the development of defensive and counter-attacking body movements. The theme of traditional karate training are fighting and self-defense, though its mental and moral aspect targets the overall improvement of the individual. So students, similar to this, we are going to learn a lesson, Yonamine and Bushi. It is a story which took place in Japan, wherein Yonamine Chiru, a beautiful intelligent girl who is well trained in karate that no one can beat her. Now let us begin with our lesson. Yonamine and Bushi. Yonamine Chiru was the most admired girl in Okinawa. She was intelligent, tall, strong, big and beautiful. And most important of all, she was so well trained in karate that no one could beat her. When it was time to get her married, her father, who was a rich merchant, began to worry. He loved his daughter and wanted her to be happy and well cared for. She was beautiful and she would inherit a fortune from him. But where, oh where, could he find a young man who would come forward to marry a woman who was stronger than him? Yonamine had her own ideas about marriage. She declared firmly, "I will only marry a man who can beat me in a fair fight." So students, Yonamine Chiru was most respected and loved girl in Okinawa. Okinawa is a place in Japan. She was intelligent and beautiful, and most importantly, she was well trained in karate. Karate is a type of Japanese martial art which was originated in Okinawa. No one could beat her, and when it was time for her to get married, her father, who was a merchant, began to worry. He wanted his daughter to be happy and get married to a person who will take good care of her. So he was thinking who would marry his daughter. And Yonamine had her own ideas, her own views about marriage. And one fine day she declared strictly to her father that I will marry a man who can beat me in a fight, that is, in the game of karate. Surprisingly, many young men picked up the challenge and came forward to fight her. After all, she was a beautiful girl with a fortune. Many wrestlers were eager to win her in a contest of martial arts. Martial arts means any of the fighting sports like judo and karate. One of the first to ask for her hand was Kojo, who was actually bigger and stronger than Yonamine. He was so tall and well built that his hands were like shovels. Shovel means a tool. And his legs resembled tree trunks. Resembled means looked like. But he played foul. Even as Yonamine was bowing to him in the customary means usual sign of respect to one's opponent. He threw a punch at her, breaking the rules of the game. Yonamine was angry. She caught hold of his arm and twisted it so powerfully that the unsportive Kojo fell down in a heap and had to limp away, defeated. So, students, the young man took up the challenge and came forward to fight with her. And after all, she was a beautiful girl with lots of wealth of her father, and many wrestlers were interested to win her in contest of fighting sports, that is karate. Kojo was first to ask for her, and he was bigger and stronger. He was so huge that his hands were like tools and his legs looked like tree trunks. But he was unfair in the game. In the game of karate, according to the custom, both the components has to bow to each other before they begin the game. But he threw a punch at her, breaking the rules of the game. So Yonamine was angry, and so she twisted him, turned his arm so powerfully that the unfair Kojo fell down suddenly and he was unable to walk. Many promising young wrestlers tried their hand, but Yonamine defeated them all. Her father was in despair. Young men wanted to marry girls who would cook and wash and make tea for their husbands. Who would marry a girl who enjoyed wrestling? Bushi was just such a man. He had trained under the karate master Sakugawa. He proved to be such an expert that he was recruited by Shoko, the king of Okinawa, to be his personal guard. His friends said to Bushi, "You should take on the challenge of this girl, Yonamine. She may be big, but you are stronger and smarter than her." Bushi too was keen to marry a girl like Yonamine. He did not want a delicate, fragile girl for a wife. Fragile means not strong or delicate. "I shall fight with her and win over her," he decided. So, students, everyone came to fight with Yonamine, but Yonamine defeated them all. Her father, he had lost hopes. Now usually men want to marry girl who can cook and wash dishes and make tea. So who would marry a girl who enjoyed wrestling? But Bushikyo was such a man who came forward. He was trained under karate master Shakugawa, and he was such an expert in karate that he was appointed by Shoko, king of Okinawa, to be his personal guard. So his friends are telling him to take up the challenge and said that she might be big, but you are more stronger and smarter than her. So Bushi was also eager to marry a girl like Yonamine. He did not want to marry a girl who was weak. He decided to fight with Yonamine and win over her. Yonamine was impressed at the sight of her new challenger. She had heard that he was one of King Shoko's personal warrior. He was tall and slim. He stood firmly on his feet and seemed unshakable. Above all, he had dark piercing eyes. Piercing eyes means eyes that seem to notice everything, which looked straight at the opponent and showed that he was fearless and straightforward. The wrestling match began. Yonamine and Bushi bowed to each other and then began to attack each other. In earnest, they punched, kicked, and twisted using their best techniques. It looked as if the match was going to be a tie. Nobody winning, nobody losing. So, students, as soon as possible, Yonamine sees a new challenger, Bushi, at the very first sight. She gets impressed, and she had already heard about him, that Bushi was a personal warrior of King Shoko. He was tall, slim, and stood still on his feet. And above all, he had eyes that seemed to notice everything, and he was fearless or didn't show any signs of having fear. The wrestling match began, and Yonamine and Bushi bowed to each other and began to attack each other. They used their best techniques like kicked, twisted, and punched. It looked like the match was going to be a tie, as both of them were good players. So the match would be a tie, that is, no one would be winning or no one would be losing. But at a crucial moment in the fight, crucial means extremely important, Yonamine paused. Ever so briefly, Bushi took advantage of the moment and brought her down with a swift punch. Yonamine's father was a very happy man. Bushi and Yonamine were married in a splendid ceremony. It was a happy marriage. Yonamine was kind and loving. She cooked and cleaned and kept the house spick and span. One day, when she was sweeping the kitchen, Bushi saw her lift a huge bag of rice with her left hand. As she swept beneath the bag with her right hand, he grew thoughtfully. Is she really so strong? And yet I brought her down with one punch? So, students, as they were having a fight, at the extremely important movement and fight, Yonamine pushed, and Bushi took advantage of that moment and brought her down with just one quick punch. And Yonamine's father was very happy as Yonamine was defeated by Bushi. And then Bushi and Yonamine were married, and they had a very good and an impressive ceremony. It was a happy marriage. Yonamine was very kind and loving. She cooked and cleaned and kept the house clean and tidy. One day, as Yonamine was sweeping the kitchen, Bushi saw her lift a huge bag of rice with just one hand, that is, the left hand, as she swept under the bag with right hand. And after seeing that, he was thoughtful. He was wondering that is she really so strong? And still he had defeated her with just one punch. One day, Yonamine announced that she would like to visit her parents. I will leave in the evening and return the next day in time to cook your dinner, she said to her husband. You really should not travel during the night, Bushi said to her firmly. There are bandits about. Bandits means thieves who attack travelers. It is just not safe for a woman to go out alone after it is dark. My dear husband, you forgot that you married a trained wrestler, Yonamine said to him with a smile. Don't forget that I threw you down, flat on the ground, said Bushi. You are not unbeatable. Don't worry, said Yonamine. Bandits are not as skilled as you are. I can take care of myself. So, students, one fine day, Yonamine tells her husband, that is Bushi, that she would like to visit her parents. So he agreed, and Yonamine was about to leave in the evening and return back the next day to cook the dinner, she said to her husband. But Bushi said to her strictly that you should not travel during the night time because there are thieves roaming around and it is not safe for a woman to go out alone in the dark. Then Yonamine smiles and tells her husband that did you forget that you have married a trained wrestler and an expert? So then Bushi is telling Yonamine that you also don't forget that I threw you down flat on the ground with a punch. So Yonamine is convincing Bushi and telling him that don't worry, thieves are not experts as you are and I can take care of myself. Bushi was not pleased. She is overconfident, he thought to himself. She must be taught a lesson for her own good. That evening, Yonamine left to walk to her father's home. As soon as she departed, Bushi disguised himself as a bandit, wearing shabby clothes. Shabby means old and in bad condition. Smearing. Smearing means spreading over a surface. Dark colors over his hand and covering his face with a scarf. He ran as fast as he could to hide behind a clump of trees at a fork on the road. Fork means a place where a road divides into two parts. Darkness fell and he saw Yonamine approaching the fork, from where she would take a left turn to reach her father's house. When she crossed the clumps of trees, Bushi jumped out from behind the trees and tried to attack her. So students, he was not satisfied with Yonamine's reply and he thought that she is quite overconfident. So he decided to teach her a lesson. So Yonamine leaves to walk to her father's home. And as soon as she leaves, Bushi changes his appearance as a thief, wearing old and dirty clothes with dark color over his hand and face with a scarf. And he ran as fast as he could to hide behind the trees. It was dark and he saw Yonamine coming, so Bushi thought this is the right time to attack her. So Bushi jumped out from behind the trees and tried to attack Yonamine. Yonamine was swift and sharp in her reaction to the attack. She held her attacker by the hand and kicked him with such force that the attacker fell to the ground, unconscious. Yonamine dragged him and tied him to a tree with her sash. Sash means belt. She adjusted her backpack and set off around a corner for her father's home. The next day, as she was returning home in the afternoon, she saw her bandit still tied to the tree as she had left him the previous night. "Shall I untie you now or leave you here?" she asked him. "Please untie me," mumbled the bandit. "I beg you to forgive me. I shall not ever do this again." So, students, Yonamine was sharp in her reaction when she got attacked and held the attacker by the hand and kicked him with force. The attacker fell to the ground unconscious, and she dragged him and tied him to a tree with her belt. Then she adjusted her bag and left for her father's home. And the next day, while she was returning home in the afternoon, she saw her thief still tied to the tree as she had left the previous night, and asked him if she shall untie him or leave him. Saying softly, he responded to untie him and begged to forgive him, and he won't do anything such again. Swiftly, she untied him and walked away quickly. She was in a hurry. She had to reach home in time to cook her husband's evening meal. Little did she realize that she had just released her husband from his captivity. Captivity means imprisonment. That evening, quite a while after she had set the dinner ready, Bushi walked in looking tired and dull. She helped him wash and set out fresh clothes for him to wear. She invited him to have a hot meal. So, students, she quickly untied him and walked away, as she was in hurry to reach home in time to cook for her husband. As she had promised her husband that the next day she will return to cook meal, but she didn't realize that she had no clue that it was her husband whom she released from imprisonment. And that evening, when she was setting the dinner, Bushi walked in looking very tired. So she helped him and arranged some fresh set of clothes for him to wear and invited him to have a hot meal. As Bushi sat down to dinner, he brought out a white sash from his pocket and gave it to his wife. "This is yours, if I am not mistaken," he said, looking into her eyes. "Oh, Bushi, was it you? I am so sorry," exclaimed Yonamine. "You don't have to be sorry," said Bushi. "You taught me a lesson that I won't forget all my life, and that is, don't underestimate anybody." Underestimate means to think that somebody is weaker than he really is. "Not even a woman?" asked Yonamine playfully. "Especially not a woman," said Bushi, and they burst out laughing together. So, students, as he sat to have his dinner, he removed a white belt from his pocket and he gave it to his wife, that is Yonamine, and told her that This is yours, if I'm not wrong. He looks into her eyes and says this. So she is surprised and with emotions, she tells him that, was it you, Bushi? And she feels very sorry. But Bushi tells Yonamine that don't be sorry. You have taught me a great lesson which I won't forget for my entire life, and that is don't underestimate anybody. And then jokingly, Yonamine asked him, not even a woman? And he responded that, especially not a woman. And then at the end, both of them they started laughing loudly together. Write 1-2 lines about the following. First one is Yonamine's ideas about marriage. So students, Yonamine had her own idea about marriage. And what was her idea about marriage? You have to answer. Second one is how Bushi defeated Yonamine in the wrestling. So students, in the wrestling match, how did Bushi defeated Yonamine? You have to answer. Third one is why Bushi told Yonamine not to travel at night. So students, Bushi had told Yonamine not to travel at night. And what was the reason and why he told her like that? You have to answer. Fourth one is Yonamine's fight with Bushi. So students, Yonamine had a fight with Bushi as a bandit. And how did she fight with him? You have to answer. Fifth one is the lesson that Bushi learned. So students, what lesson had Bushi learned from this? You have to answer. Write the antonyms of. First one is strong. Second one is attack. Third one is best. Fourth one is tall. Fifth one is respect. So students, you have to write the opposites for the given words. Pick out the adjectives from the following sentences. First one is Yonamine is an intelligent girl. Second one is it was a fierce battle. Third one is he was a happy man. So students, you have to find out the adjectives from the given sentences. Write about the following in short. Yonamine Chiru of Okinawa. So students, you have to write about Yonamine Chiru, how she is, and you have to describe her and write it in short. I hope it's clear till here. Thank you.